The great hall floated above the clouds of Nexus Prime, held in the sky by technology older than human civilization. Inside, 12 alien species sat in judgment. Their chairs formed a circle around a single figure who knelt on the cold floor, her hands bound behind her back. Her name was Alara Vance. She was 17 years old. The hall was called the Obsidian Spire, and for 9,000 years, the Galactic Council had ruled from this place. They decided which species would live and which would die. They chose which worlds would prosper and which would burn. And today, they had decided to make an example of a human girl. Alara kept her head high. Her dark hair fell across her face, but she did not look down. She would not give them that satisfaction. Around her, 100,000 aliens watched from the viewing galleries. The broadcast drones floated above, sending her image to 30 trillion souls across 1,000 worlds. High Arbiter Velkorath rose from his seat. He was Kethsari, the species that had ruled the galaxy since before humans had learned to make fire. He stood 9 feet tall, his skin like polished obsidian, his eyes burning with cold blue light. When he spoke, his voice filled the hall like thunder. The human known as Alara Vance has been found guilty of species contamination, he announced. She has spread dangerous ideas to the children of loyal species. She has taught them rebellion. She has taught them hope. He said the word like it was poison. Elara remembered those children. The small Velith girl who had asked why her people had to serve. The young Karathi boy who wanted to know if things could ever be different. She had told them stories. Earth stories. Stories about people who stood up against giants and won. Stories about the small and the weak who changed the world. She had not known it was a crime. Now she understood that in this galaxy, hope itself was illegal for the lower species. The punishment for species contamination is death, Velkorath continued. The execution will be broadcast to all human colonies as a reminder of their place in our great civilization. A reminder. That was what she was now. A message written in blood to tell humanity to stay quiet, stay small, stay afraid. In the gallery, Alara saw her father. Ambassador Marcus Vance sat frozen, his face a mask of stone. But she knew him. She could see the fire burning behind his eyes, the rage that he held back only through years of practice. He had served as Earth's voice to the Council for 15 years. He had smiled and bowed and accepted insults with grace. He had done everything to protect his people, and now they were going to kill his daughter in front of him. The other human diplomats sat beside him. They were few, maybe 20 in total. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 100 years ago. They were children in a galaxy of ancient empires. They had no great fleets, no powerful weapons, no eyes. They survived by being useful, by working the jobs that other species did not want, by keeping their heads down and their mouths shut. But Alara saw something in their eyes that the Council did not notice. It was small, hidden, but it was there. It was the same look her father had. The same look she had seen in old pictures from Earth's history, in the eyes of people who had been pushed too far. Velkorath was still speaking, listing her crimes, teaching human literature, sharing human music, telling human stories. Each one was a violation of the cultural purity laws that kept the lower species in their place. Does the criminal have any final words? He asked, though his tone made clear he did not care. Alara stood. Her legs shook, but her voice did not. I taught them that they matter, she said. I taught them that no one is born to serve. I taught them that even the smallest person can change the galaxy. She looked directly at Velkorath, at his ancient eyes that had watched civilizations rise and fall. You can kill me, but you cannot kill an idea. And the idea is already free. Silence filled the hall. Then Velkorath laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. How very human, he said. You will die for nothing, and your species will watch and remember their place." He gestured to the guards. They pulled Alara back to her knees. The execution would take place in 2 hours in the crystalline arena, where all the galaxy could watch. As they dragged her away, Alara looked at her father one last time. She saw him reach into his pocket. She saw him pull out a small device, no bigger than a coin. She saw him press it. She did not know what it meant, but she saw something change in his face. The mask fell away, and what was beneath it was terrible and beautiful and utterly without fear. In that moment, Ambassador Marcus Vance sent a single transmission. It went out unencrypted, open for anyone to hear. It reached every human ship, every human station, every human colony in the galaxy. 3 words, spoken in a voice that had forgotten how to beg. They took her. In the mining stations of the Outer Rim, men and women stopped their work and listened. In the cargo ships that carried goods between worlds, crews gathered around their communication screens. In the factories and the farms and the service halls where humans worked for alien masters, people heard those 3 words and understood. Something old woke up. Something that humanity had tried to forget. Something that the galaxy had never seen. Humans were not a warrior species. They had no great armies. They had no ancient traditions of conquest. But they had something else. Something that the Kethsari, in all their 9,000 years of rule, had never understood. Humans did not know how to give up. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that had nearly ended them. They had crawled out of the mud and reached for the stars. They had faced extinction 100 times and refused to die. And now, across the galaxy, they remembered what they were. The Council did not notice. They were too busy preparing the execution, too confident in their power, too certain that the small and weak would always bow. They had made a mistake. They had taken a human child, and in 27 minutes, they would learn what that meant. The message spread at the speed of light. It passed through relay stations and communication hubs, bouncing from world to world, ship to ship. 3 words that changed everything. They took her. Commander Yuki Tanaka heard it first. She was sitting in the captain's chair of the cargo vessel Perseverance, hauling mining equipment through empty space. A crew of 23 souls were scattered across the ship, doing their jobs, living their lives. She called them to the bridge. "You heard the message," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. "The ambassador's daughter. They're going to execute her." Live broadcast to every human colony. No one spoke. They did not need to. They all knew what the Council thought of humans. They had all felt the weight of alien eyes looking down at them. They had all swallowed their pride and kept their heads low because that was how you survived. But there were things that went beyond survival. Nexus Prime is 4 hours away at maximum speed. Tanaka continued. "If we burn the engines past the safety limits, we can make it in 2. We won't have fuel to get back. We won't have weapons that can scratch their defense grid." She paused. "But we have a cargo hold full of mining explosives, and I know a way through their shields." She did not ask for volunteers. She did not need to. Every single person on that ship stood and walked to their stations. The Perseverance changed course. Behind it, the stars seemed to watch and wait. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. On Earth's moon, in a museum dedicated to human history, Admiral James Okonkwo stood before a display of old warships. He was 83 years old. He had fought in the unification wars that had brought Earth together, back when humans still pointed their weapons at each other. Those days were long gone. The warships were relics now, preserved as reminders of a violent past. But they still worked. Okonkwo pressed his hand against the glass. Behind it, the battleship Defiance waited in silence. "Computer," he said. Verify command codes. Okonkwo James, Admiral, retired. Authorization Omega 773. The computer beeped. Codes accepted. Awaiting orders. Wake them up, Okonkwo said. Wake them all up. Across 17 docking stations, lights flickered on. Engines that had been cold for decades began to warm. Weapons that had been empty for a generation were loaded. And humans, old veterans, and young volunteers walked up the boarding ramps and took their places. They were museum pieces crewed by farmers and teachers and miners. They had no chance against the modern fleets of the Council. They went anyway. In the Kethsari shipyards of Forge Station 9, 10,000 humans worked to build the great vessels of the Empire. They welded the hulls and fitted the engines and installed the weapons that would be used to keep their species in chains. At minute 12, they stopped. Every human worker, at exactly the same moment, put down their tools. They did not shout. They did not fight. They simply stood in silence, their hands at their sides, their eyes looking forward. The alien supervisors screamed at them, threatened them, hit them. The humans did not move. News of the stoppage spread. And it was not just Forge Station 9. It was everywhere. Every mine, every factory, every service hall where humans worked, the same thing happened. The galaxy's economy depended on human labor. In a single moment, that labor stopped. Ships did not get built. Goods did not get moved. Machines did not get fixed. The great engine of galactic civilization ground to a halt, because the people who kept it running had decided that enough was enough. But it was minute 19 that truly terrified the Council. At the edge of the galaxy, far from any inhabited world, the human science vessel Prometheus drifted in the darkness. For 40 years, the ship had studied the quantum filaments, the strange threads of energy that made faster than light travel possible. Without them, the galaxy would be cut off. Each world would be alone, separated by distances that would take generations to cross. Dr. Elena Chum had spent her entire career studying those filaments. She understood them better than anyone alive. And she understood what would happen if they were disrupted. Her message reached the Council chambers just as they were finalizing the execution plans. This is Dr. Elena Chun of the research vessel Prometheus, her voice said, calm and clear. We have completed our 40-year study of the quantum filament network. We now understand its structure completely. We know how it works. We know how it holds together. She paused. And we know how to make it fall apart. The message ended there. She did not make threats. She did not make demands. She simply told them what humanity was now capable of and let them imagine the rest. Hi, Arbiter Velkorath read the message 3 times. His advisors told him it was a bluff. Humans were primitives. They could not possibly understand technology that had existed before their species had learned to walk upright. But Velkorath had not ruled for 300 years by being stupid. He saw the precision in Chun's words. He heard the calm certainty in her voice. And he felt, for the first time in his long life, the cold touch of fear. Continue the execution, he ordered. But his voice wavered. Aye, Arbiter, one of his advisors said. Perhaps we should continue it. Velkorath shouted. He would not show weakness. Not to humans. Not to anyone. But as he sat back in his chair, he watched the reports coming in. Ships appearing from nowhere. Workers stopping across the galaxy. And somewhere in the darkness, a single vessel that held the power to cut the stars apart. He had thought humans were animals. Useful tools to be directed and discarded. He was beginning to realize that he had made a terrible mistake, and he still had 8 minutes to understand just how terrible it would be. The crystalline arena was the most beautiful place Alara had ever seen, and it would be the last place she ever saw. The walls were made of living crystal, grown over thousands of years into patterns that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. The floor was smooth white stone, polished by the feet of millions who had walked here before. And above, the sky was open to the stars, held back by invisible shields that kept the air inside. 100,000 aliens filled the seats. They had come from across the galaxy to watch a human die. Some were curious. Some were excited. Some were simply there because watching executions was entertainment. And this one had been promoted heavily. Elar, a walk to the center of the arena. Her hands were no longer bound, but there was nowhere to run. Guards lined every exit. Ships circled overhead. The defense grid of Nexus Prime was the strongest in the galaxy, designed to stop entire fleets. She was one girl. She had no weapons, no army, no hope of escape, but she was not afraid. She had made peace with death when they had first taken her. Now all that remained was to show them how a human faced the end. The broadcast drone circled her, sending her image across the stars. On Earth, people gathered in the streets to watch. In the colonies, families huddled around screens. On ships and stations scattered across the void, humans stopped what they were doing and paid attention. High Arbiter Velkorath entered the arena. The crowd roared in approval. He walked slowly, enjoying the moment, his ceremonial blade gleaming in the light. This was not just an execution. It was a statement, a reminder to every species in the galaxy of who held the power. Ilara Vance, he announced, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the arena. You have been found guilty of crimes against the Galactic Order. The punishment is death. Do you have any final words? He expected her to beg. They always begged at the end. Ilara looked up at the drones. She knew her father was watching. She knew every human in the galaxy was watching. And she remembered something her grandmother had taught her long ago on Earth. Before she had ever dreamed of walking among the stars, she opened her mouth and began to speak. Do not go gentle into that good night, she said. Her voice was clear and strong. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage against the dying of the light. The aliens did not understand. The words meant nothing to them. They were ancient, written by a human poet centuries before faster-than-light travel, before contact with other species, before humanity knew it was not alone. But the humans understood. Across the galaxy, people began to recite with her. In ships and stations, in colonies and cities, millions of voices joined as one. The words passed from mouth to mouth, from heart to heart, spreading like fire through dry grass. Though wise men at their end, no dark is right. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Ambassador Marcus Vance stood in the viewing gallery, tears streaming down his face, speaking the words his mother had taught him. His daughter had learned from him and now spoke to the stars on the Perseverance. Commander Tanaka recited the poem as she pushed her engines beyond their limits, her ship screaming toward Nexus Prime on the Defiance. Admiral Okanku spoke the words as his ancient warship led 16 others into what they all knew was certain death. In the factories and the mines where humans had stopped working. They stood together and said the words, their voices rising in defiance. Ilara continued, And you, my father, there on the sad height curse, bless me now with your fierce tears. I pray, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light. She looked at her father as she spoke. She saw him mouth the words back to her. She saw the pride in his eyes, even through the tears. Velkorath did not understand what was happening. He saw the humans in the crowd weeping and speaking strange words. He saw the broadcast feeds showing the same scene repeated across the galaxy, but he could not comprehend it. Enough, he said. Your words are meaningless. They are everything, Alara replied. They are who we are. They are what you will never take from us. Vel'Korath raised his blade. The crowd fell silent. This was the moment they had come to see. Any last requests? He asked, mocking her. Alara smiled. It was not the smile of someone who had given up. It was the smile of someone who knew something that he did not. Just one, she said. Look up. Vel'Korath looked up. The defense grid of Nexus Prime was flickering. The first reports were coming in, confused and frightened. A cargo ship had appeared inside the shield perimeter. It should have been impossible. The navigation required would be beyond any computer, requiring perfect timing and insane precision. But humans had never let impossible stop them. Perseverance slammed into the primary shield generator. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. Commander Tanaka and her crew of 23 died instantly, their lives given for a chance, just a chance, at something more. The shields failed. And through the gap came 17 ships that should have been in museums. Vel'Korath stared at the sky in disbelief. Around him, the crowd began to panic. Guards ran to their posts. Alarm screamed. Alara stood in the center of the arena, watching the stars fall. You should have listened, she said. We tried to tell you. We tried to show you. But you would not see. Vel'Korath turned to her, rage twisting his face. Kill her, he screamed at his guards. Kill her now. But before anyone could move, the broadcast screens changed. A new face appeared, hard and cold and burning with fury. Ambassador Marcus Vance looked out at the galaxy, and when he spoke, his words were the end of an era. You have taught us that we are weak, he said. Today, we teach you what we are. We are the children of Earth. We are the survivors. We are the ones who would not die. His eyes found the camera, found Vel'Korath, found every being who had ever looked down on humanity. And we have come for our daughter. The battle for Nexus Prime had begun. The battle above Nexus Prime was not supposed to be possible. 17 human warships, ancient relics pulled from museums and crewed by volunteers, faced a fleet of over 300 Kethsari vessels. Modern weapons against antiques. Trained warriors against farmers and teachers and miners who had never fired. A shot in anger. The numbers said humanity would die in. Minutes. The numbers were wrong. Admiral Okonkwo sat in the command chair of the Defiance, watching the enemy fleet arrange itself for what they thought would be an easy slaughter. His crew was young, most of them having learned to operate the old systems from manuals and training videos found in archives. But they had something that Kethsari did not have. They had nothing left to lose. All ships, Okonkwo said into his communicator, remove the safety limits on all weapons. Push the engines beyond maximum. We are not here to survive. We are here to buy time. The human ships surged forward. Their weapons fired in patterns that no modern tactical computer would recommend, overloading their systems, burning out their own guns with each shot. But those shots hit with more power than anything the Kethsari had expected. The first enemy cruiser exploded. Then a second. Then a third. The Kethsari commander screamed orders at his fleet. How were these museum pieces destroying his ships? It was impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be afraid. But fear was a luxury. And the humans had left it behind the moment they changed course for Nexus Prime. The Defiance took the center of the formation. She was the oldest ship in the fleet, built during a time when humans still fought each other. Her weapons were primitive by modern standards, her shields barely functional. But Okonkwo knew her weaknesses and her strengths. Target their flagship, he ordered. All power to forward weapons. Sir, that will leave us defenseless. I know. Okonkwo smiled. Do it anyway. The Defiance's main guns fired. The beam cut through space like a blade of light, slicing through the shields of the Cathsari flagship as if they were paper. The massive ship, pride of the Council fleet, broke apart in a cascade of explosions. The human crews cheered, but their celebration was short. Return fire hammered the Defiance from all sides. Her shields failed. Her hull cracked. Fires broke out across every deck. Okonkwo felt the ship dying around him. He had known this would happen. He had accepted it the moment he had activated those old command codes. "It has been an honor," he said to his crew. Then, to the fleet, "Continue the mission. Get to the surface. Save the girl." The Defiance exploded. Admiral James Okonkwo, 83 years old, died at his post, buying 30 seconds of confusion that let 6 human ships break through the enemy line stood in the crystalline arena. The battle was just as desperate. Velkorath had recovered from his shock. His guards surrounded Alara, weapons ready. Above, pieces of destroyed ships fell like meteors, burning through the atmosphere. "You think this changes anything?" He snarled at her. "Your ships are dying. Your people are dying. And you will still die." Alara watched the sky. She watched the Defiance break apart. She watched other ships follow, their crews sacrificing themselves without hesitation. "You do not understand," she said. "You have never understood." "Understood what?" "Why we came." She met his eyes. "We did not come to win. We came because some things matter more than winning. We came because you cannot let fear choose your future. We came because my father loves me, and his people love him, and when you have that kind of love, you do not count the cost." Velkorath raised his blade again. "Pretty words. They will not save you." Before he could strike, the ground shook. An explosion, close and powerful, ripped through the arena wall. Through the smoke and dust came figures in human spacesuits, their faces hidden behind dark visors. They were not soldiers. The clothes beneath their suits were the uniforms of servants. The simple garments of cooks and cleaners and workers who served the aliens of Nexus Prime. They had been here for years, doing their jobs, keeping their heads down, waiting. They had hidden weapons. They had made plans. And they had waited for this moment. The servants attacked. They fought with the desperation of people who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Guards fell before they could react. Defense systems failed because the people who maintained them had sabotaged them days ago. Velkorath backed away, suddenly afraid. His guards were dead or fleeing. His arena was in chaos. And through the smoke, more humans were coming. One of the servants reached Alara first. He was an older man, his hands scarred from years of hard work. He pulled off his helmet, and Alara recognized him. He had served food in the council chambers. She had spoken to him once, asked his name. "Marcus," she said. "Your name is Marcus. Like my father." He smiled. "Your father's message reached us. We have been waiting for a long time, child. Waiting for someone to say it was time to fight back." He handed her a weapon. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Then come. Your father is coming down from orbit. We need to reach the landing zone." They ran through the burning arena. Around them, the battle continued. Humans fought against guards, against security systems, against everything the Council had built to keep them in chains. Many fell, many died. But they did not stop. Above, the sky was filled with fire. Only 6 human ships remained, their hulls scorched and broken. But they had done the impossible. They had cleared a path to the surface. A shuttle dropped through the clouds, moving too fast, its engines screaming. It hit the ground hard in the center of the arena, and the doors opened before it had even stopped moving. Ambassador Marcus Vance jumped out. He wore no armor, carried no weapon. He simply ran toward his daughter with the speed of a man who had forgotten that he was old. that he was unarmed, that he was surrounded by enemies. He reached Alara and pulled her into his arms. He held her so tight she could barely breathe, and she felt his tears on her face, mixing with her own. "I found you," he whispered. "I found you." "Dad," she said, her voice breaking. "The ships, the people, they all died for me." "No." He pulled back to look at her face. "They died for what you represent. They died for hope. They died for the idea that we do not have to accept the galaxy as it is." He touched her cheek. "They died because you showed them that one person can stand against the darkness and refuse to blink. That is worth dying for." Around them, the sounds of battle began to fade. The Council's forces were retreating. The human servants held the arena dot, and Vel'Korath stood alone among the ruins of his power. Watching everything he had built crumble around him, he raised his blade one final time and charged at the ambassador. But before he could take 3 steps, a hand caught his arm. He turned to see a Velith servant, a small creature from a species that had served the Kethsari for 5,000 years. The same servant he had beaten for decades. The same servant who had learned from humans that dignity was not given, it was taken. The blade fell, and the old order fell with it. The broadcast had never stopped. 30 trillion beings across 1,000 worlds had watched the battle. They had seen the impossible attack, the sacrifice of the ships, the uprising in the arena. They had seen a father hold his daughter in the ruins of the Council's power, and they had seen a Velith servant bring down the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council. For 5,000 years, the Velith had served. They were small, quiet, and obedient. They never complained. They never fought back. They had accepted their place at the bottom of galactic society because they believed they had no other choice. But in 27 minutes, humans had shown them that choice always existed. It was just a matter of being willing to pay the price. The Velith servant who killed Vel'Korath was named Senna. She was 60 years old, which was young for her species. She had served in the council chambers since she was a child. She had been beaten more times than she could count. She had watched her family sold to different masters, scattered across the galaxy, lost forever. She had learned to hide her anger. She had learned to smile when they hurt her. She had learned to survive, but survival was not living. The humans had taught her that. They had taught her something that no other species in the galaxy understood. They had taught her to hope that when Vel'Korath fell, Senna did not run. She stood over his body and looked at the drones that were still broadcasting. She spoke in a voice that trembled but did not break. "We are the Velith," she said. "For 5,000 years we have served. Today we serve no more." Her words spread across the galaxy. And on every world where Velith lived as servants, something changed. They looked at each other. They saw their chains not as facts of nature, but as things that could be broken. They began to rise. The Velith were not alone. The Korathi had been conquered 3,000 years ago, and forced to work in the deep mines where other species could not survive. The Tanari had been stripped of their homeworld and scattered as refugees, existing only at the mercy of their hosts. A dozen other species lived under the Council's boot, told that this was the natural order, that some were born to rule and others to serve. They had believed it. For thousands of years, they had believed it. But now they had seen something different. They had seen 17 ships face 300 and refuse to retreat. They had seen workers stop the machines of the galaxy with nothing but their silence. They had seen servants rise up with weapons they had hidden for years, waiting for a moment that had finally come. They had seen that the powerful could bleed. On the planet Velith Prime, the servants of the great houses walked out of their quarters and did not return. On the mining worlds of the Korathi, the workers climbed up from the deep places and demanded to see the sky. On stations and ships and colonies across the galaxy, those who had been told, They were nothing discovered that they were. In fact, everything. The council tried to respond. But the council was broken. Velkorath was dead. The fleet above Nexus Prime was scattered. And the quantum filament network, the threads that held the galaxy together, hummed with a warning that no one dared ignore. Dr. Elena Chun sent one final message from the Prometheus. She did not threaten. She did not demand. She simply stated a fact. We can discuss the future of this galaxy in peace, or we can discuss it in darkness. The remaining council members chose peace. The negotiations took months. Ambassador Marcus Vance led the human delegation, his daughter beside him. She was no longer a prisoner. She was a symbol, a reminder of what had started the revolution and what it had been fought for. The other species sent their representatives too. The Velith, for the first time in 5,000 years, had a voice at the table. The Korathi, the Tanari, and all the others who had been silenced finally had a chance to speak. It was not easy. There was anger that ran deep, wounds that would take generations to heal. The Kevsari who remained were divided between those who wanted revenge and those who understood that the old ways were gone forever. But somehow, they found a way forward. The new Galactic Compact was signed on the anniversary of the battle. It recognized the equal rights of all species. It abolished the practice of forced labor. It established a council where every voice could be heard, not just those with the biggest fleets. And at the very beginning, before any other words, there was a single article that the Kethsari themselves had insisted upon. They had learned something in those 27 minutes, something they would never forget. Article 1 of the Galactic Compact reads simply, "Never touch their children." Years passed. The galaxy changed. The old empires faded, and new partnerships rose in their place. Humans spread further across the stars, no longer servants but equals, no longer silent but proud, and in schools on 100 worlds. Children learned the story of Alara Vance. They learned about the 17 ships and the workers who stopped the machines and the servants who rose up with hidden weapons. They learned about a girl who faced death with a poem on her lips and a fire in her heart. But mostly, they learned the lesson that humans had taught the galaxy. It was a simple lesson, one that every tyrant fears and every free person knows. No chains last forever. No power is absolute. And when ordinary people decide that they have had enough, when they choose to stand together against the darkness, nothing in the universe can stop them. Alara lived to be very old. She became a teacher, then an ambassador, then a grandmother who told stories to children who could barely imagine a time when the galaxy had been different. On the last day of her life, her great-granddaughter asked her what she remembered most about those 27 minutes that had changed everything. Alara smiled. Her eyes were dim, but the fire was still there. "I remember the silence," she said. "The moment before the ships came. I was standing in that arena, surrounded by enemies, with death a breath away. And I was not afraid." She took her great-granddaughter's hand. "Because I knew that somewhere out there, my people were coming. I did not know how or when or if they would arrive in time. But I knew they were coming. Because that is what we do. We do not abandon our own. We do not surrender to the dark." She closed her eyes. "We rage against the dying of the light." That night, Alara Vance passed away in her sleep. The galaxy mourned. Ships flew with their lights dimmed. Planets observed a moment of silence. But on Earth, in a small ceremony attended by family and friends, they read the poem that had started it all. And when they reached the final lines, every human voice joined together, just as they had on that day so long ago. "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." The words echoed across the stars. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the galaxy remembered what it had learned about the strange, stubborn, beautiful species called humanity. They never gave up. They never surrendered. And when they loved someone, there was no force in the universe that could stand in their way. That was the legacy of Alara Vance. That was the gift humanity gave to the stars, and it would never be forgotten.